So, welcome to Timeout with Kevin. This is Andy, the head sports director at the Duncan Banner. So, the first question I ask everybody is, who's the hardest player you played against?
The hardest player I've ever played against was my freshman year in high school. I played football and played against a guy who's now the Detroit Lions quarterback, Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
He went on to finish his season on varsity that year, and when you're playing freshman football, so you're just learning the playbook for your high school, and you're just trying to learn things. But he had already learned his playbook.
Yeah,
and
that's crazy.
I don't remember the stat totals, but he threw for I would almost say 200, 300 yards.
Yeah.
And me being a former defensive player, that just hurt because you're just you're playing with a man in a boy's body, because it's he was a freshman, but he wasn't a freshman. So he's definitely the hardest player that I played against. And
was that only that one time, or did y'all play against?
Yeah. Oh, that was only one time that I played, because I didn't play football after my freshman year. I went to another sport, but so that was the only time I played him. But our school played him several other times in football. In fact, faced our senior year. That was our first game. That was the first game of the non-district season. So we opened up the season against their team, and at both games we lost.
That's crazy.
So we started that. Well, I say we, but my teammates that still played. They got trounced and started the season out 0-1. So
that's crazy. So, I know you're into journalism and stuff. Can you talk about your high school time and kind of what made you start getting into journalism?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, my high school years, I played some baseball, I played some football, and my junior year of high school, I had to have an elective in high school. I was trying to fill out my schedule, and someone said, "Hey, Andy, you're a good writer. You should take Journalism 1 as an elective." And I said, "Okay," it's an easy class, because I'm I was wanting something easy to do. And ended up taking Journalism 1, and the teacher, who was also the advisor of the newspaper and the yearbook, said, "Andy, I think you have a gift. I think you need to go into this." And so I was like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
So the senior year, I was in yearbook, and so got to put together the whole yearbook, and that was kind of the start of my journalism.
Gotcha,
because back in elementary school, I was always told I was a good writer, and you should pursue writing if at all costs. And then that junior year of high school, the journalism teacher was like, "Hey, I think you should go into the field, be a sports writer," because she knew I was an athlete, and she was like, "I think you would be a good sports writer." And I was like, so I ended up pursuing that, and got into USAO in Chickasha, and went through that program there, and graduated, worked there for a little bit in the sports information office. And then I got the job in January of 2016 here at the Banner. So
Gotcha. And so I'm happy you brought the USAO up. So can we backtrack a little bit and talk about your writing at USAO, and how did that kind of shape what you do kind of now? Did it make it a lot easier for you to transition into the Duncan Banner?
Yeah, because basically my time writing articles at USAO was focused on their sports team.
Yeah.
So I was writing articles for the softball team, soccer, basketball, cross country was there at the time. They've added a lot more sports since then. Baseball was there. So we definitely I got a chance to write all those sports. And then when I left USAO to go to the Banner, they basically I got to cover more sports, and some sports that I actually loved playing. Like my first week at the Banner was Stevens County tournament week.
Gotcha.
And so the games were at Comanche, and so that's how I started my job at the Banner.
That's
Stevens County
time to
tournament
do it,
week.
yeah.
So
Yeah. So like, what is like your advice to like young like journalists? Like what would you like? Just some pieces of advice you would give to people.
Sometimes it's really hard to get into the journalism field because you don't have any bylines in different papers or different stuff. So my advice is, even if you're still in school, we have freelancers.
Right.
So like we can give you guys opportunities to write and even try to get better at journalism. So like that would be my suggestion, is try to obviously write for your high school paper if they have one, or yearbook or whatever is. But the advice I would also give is kind of like, just if you can work with the local newspaper, like just kind of there's always opportunities for people to get involved. So I think that's a good way to do it. So
right. And so what are some of the positives and negatives about working at the Duncan Banner that I think like just some small things people might not realize, like with your job?
The positives are, obviously I get to write about sports and go to games for a living. That's the most amazing part. And it's also amazing the fact that, when you're at games and people recognize you and they come up to you and say, hey, I like this article. I like seeing you write about this. And it gives you opportunities to meet people. And then when they have a story and they pitch a story idea to you, you can be like, oh, okay, now I know who that person is. Right. Some of the negatives about, and I like my job, but the thing is, I'm one person. I cover 7 Stevens County teams.
Right, gotcha. Yeah, I can see where that can be a hassle.
So all the sports, usually it's pretty easy to get to all 7 county schools. The only sport that I cannot get to every school is football, because all the games are on Friday nights. Right. So unless they invent something to where I can be at more than one place at one time, that would be fantastic. But that's where I rely on the freelancers, where I talk to what I said about people volunteer, and we even have some paid freelance positions. Obviously it's a little different now with the way journalism is going sometimes, but we do have those opportunities available to where you can go cover a football game. And the best part is, if you're working for us, you get in the game free.
Right.
Like that's a good perk, because you're covering it for the newspaper, and all the schools love to see their kids in the paper, so they give you free admission to the game. Right. So it's one of those. It's definitely so that's kind of the positives and negatives about the business. It's and I love it. Even though it's and I want to cover all 7 county schools. That's and. My planner that I just put up at my new office, which, by the way, we have a new office, so that's one thing that we're dealing with this week, is trying to get people to realize that we have a new office. So I just put up my planner, and I've already got the whole school year written out.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm hoping that we have sports, but I'm hoping I didn't do too much work.
Yeah. So if not, then what's the next steps for you if we don't go back?
If we don't go back, well then I'll just keep up with the feature stories that I've been doing during the summer during this time down, because obviously there are a lot of people, like for example you getting a new opportunity at Mid-America Christian University. Which, by the way, that's really cool. There's former athletes that have done well in college, and I've been trying to focus on that while also focusing on the whole situation with the pandemic, because obviously people are like, well, what do you write about? You're the sports editor. How do you do your job? And I said, well, I just kind of have to be creative, and that's kind of given me a new look on my job, because instead of writing game recaps, which those are pretty easy, but now I have to say, wait, what am I writing about today? Because I don't have the games. I can't just fill the paper with game recaps. I've got to kind of look at it and that's one thing that I like about being my creativeness. Like, I try to be creative and try to keep up stories and that are engaging to all the readers that we have.
Right. And so, talk a little bit about your wife, Heather. I know she's with the games with you all the time. And so, how big of a role does she play in helping you with pictures and help writing? Like, if you have writer's block or something, like how?
She typically just does the pictures. So if I do have a little bit of like, she has helped me with some of the headlines. Like, I will say that, headlines are easy to write if you have a special moment that happens in the game. Mm-hmm. But when it's just a generic win, that the team was expected to win,
I can see where that. Yeah,
it's kind of hard to kind of summarize. Like it was easy when you scored your 1,000 career points, because that was the headline. Because hey, he scored 1,000 career points. That's a huge deal. But, obviously the next game where you guys won, it was just a regular game. Right, and it's just kind of like, so it's one of those, gotcha. So she'll help out with the photos mainly is what she does. She does a good job, and she actually brags that she's the better photographer.
Oh, wow.
She's a great person. She loves going to the games with me. So it's one of those. She's definitely, and it's really cool because being a teacher at Duncan Public Schools this year is going to be really unique for her, because the senior class this year were her first set of kids that she taught at Duncan.
Gotcha.
So it's one of those. They're seniors now, and they're going to be playing on the field. And she had them in, I think it was 5th grade. I think it's 5th grade.
Fast,
so she had them in 5th grade.
Time goes by fast.
And it's just crazy to see, some of the kids that she had in her classroom. Because I went to her classroom a few times, and just to see those kids.
Yeah.
And they'll remember. I don't remember. I forget who it was, but someone came up to me and said, "Hey, I remember you being in your wife's classroom, Mrs. Morphew." And I said, "Yeah." So it's really cool to see that atmosphere and see those kids get to play now and getting to cover them doing their thing on the courts and on the field.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's cool that y'all get to be like with each, because most people with jobs, they're off, and you never see them until you get back. And that's cool that y'all get to go to the game.
Yeah, and I have to credit, the my paper for letting me do that, because there's sometimes where, obviously she can't go with me to some events, but it's one of those things that they let her go, and it just helps us out a lot. Right. So it's definitely interesting to see, and she told me, she's like, I don't want to do any writing. She's like, I can't. I was like, okay, that's fair. So that's what she does, and she mainly takes the photos. And if I need help with maybe something, she'll pitch in a little bit. But mainly she likes to do the photos.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess that would be cool, getting action shots and stuff.
Yeah,
players,
And some of her shots I've actually kind of looked at, and I was like, okay, that is better than me. But, and so it's one of those. She's gotten better. They're definitely, the first little bit she was trying to learn the camera and everything, and so but she's definitely helped me out a lot, and
Yeah.
obviously, I could do it by myself, but it's a lot easier when she's there.
Right,
So-
right. And so here's the bonus segments. So I do it, everybody. So the first question is, what do you think about The Last Dance? And now that it's been over with and we've all watched it, like, what are some takeaways that you have from it?
I actually wrote a column about my thoughts about the whole Last Dance series, and it really boggled my mind when during the episode, talking about the flu game.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a flu game.
Right, it was pizza. Yeah,
It was pizza.
Right.
I'm like, I eat pizza all the time.
Right.
But I can't score 50 points a game.
Right.
So it kind, and of course I grew up in the 90s watching that on live TV,
Right.
and I'm like, my childhood has just been
shattered. Yeah,
because
that's crazy.
I thought it was a flu, and I was like, wow.
And that's like infamous too. The Jordan's flu game, they have the shoes for it and everything. Like, it's everywhere. It's just the flu game.
Yeah, and now I guess you could call it the pizza game.
Yeah, the pizza game or something.
The food poisoning game, maybe.
Yeah.
It doesn't ring as well as
the
flu game.
Yeah, it'll always be known as the flu game.
Yeah. So but I think Jordan was one of those lifetime athletes that you only get to see maybe once in a generation, or maybe even once in a lifetime sometimes. Because there are some good NBA stars right now, but I don't think there's any star that can say, I won 6 NBA championships.
You think Kobe was close? You think he's
I think Kobe was close. Yeah, I do think Kobe was close.
I was making sure.
Yeah, I do think Kobe.
I was making sure.
And obviously he was really close, and I think that Kobe was a really good player as well. And so it's just one of those. It's I think for Michael was during my kid, my child, while as Kobe was more towards my teenage years, and it's just
going into adulthood.
Going into adulthood,
Yeah.
and so I think that I think I got blessed to see some really good basketball because obviously when I was a kid I saw Jordan, but then we transferred into the Lakers dynasty, and that I went from the Bulls winning a lot to the Lakers.
So were you a Mavericks fan?
From being from Dallas, I was a Mavericks fan.
So who was there?
Dirk was the main.
Dirk was there.
Steve Nash.
Okay, so you were in that little. Okay, when Steve.
Michael Finley,
and Ralph LaFrance, all them guys were there.
The year I graduated high school, 2006. Was the year that the Mavericks went to the NBA Finals and lost to the Miami Heat.
Okay, yeah. People think that was rigged, too.
So the 2006 Finals was the Mavericks versus the Heat, and the Heat won that series.
Okay.
I think the Mavs could have won that series, but you also had a Dwayne Wade. You had Shaquille O'Neal.
They had Alonzo Mourning, Gary Payton. They had a lot of people.
They had a lot of
Jason
good
Williams.
Yeah, they had a lot of good players. So it was going to be a tough series regardless.
Yeah, right.
But I think it was really cool that a few years later in 2011, they ended up winning the whole thing.
And to beat the Heat.
And to beat the Heat again. I mean, that was pretty special to see. And obviously what was really cool was that was also the third straight Dallas-Fort Worth team that had made a championship because the Texas Rangers played in the 2010. Well, actually, that was the second because the Rangers played in the 2010 World Series, and then the Mavs won the title in 11.
Gotcha.
And then that fall, the Rangers went back to the World Series, which both times the Rangers lost in the World Series, which I cannot watch 2011 World Series. That's the one thing that I cannot watch. It's funny because with all these old games that are playing on TV now, that's the most constant. They keep showing the 2011 Game 6 of the World Series.
Can't watch that one.
I can't watch that one because I don't want to relive.
Yeah. So are you a big Texas everything fan still, are you more like, since you live here, are you more like a Thunder fan?
So I like what the Thunder's doing. I think the Thunder is. Obviously they had Kevin Durant, they had a couple great players, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and, Chris Paul now, and so the Thunder. I think they have the best opportunity for when the season resumes to go deep in the playoffs.
Yeah. Nobody thought they were going to be good.
I don't think anybody thought they were good, but I think they actually have a really good opportunity this year because once they resume, they played the 10 games.
Yeah.
They can jump up from the 5 or 6 seed, I think is where they're at right now.
Yeah.
They could possibly come a 3 seed.
Right.
And I think that's one of those teams that you don't want to face in the first round.
Right. And me and McGuire were talking about it at the gym not so long ago. And he was like, I think the Thunder going to win the championship this year. He said they got a chance.
They've got a chance. They got a chance.
Great, but
that's where me and McGuire might disagree a little bit. I would love to see the Thunder win an NBA title, but
the state's gonna go crazy. If
I think the Lakers this year are really good.
Everybody's saying the Clippers. Dude, please don't say the Clippers.
No, I was actually going to say the Milwaukee Bucks. I think
you can go.
I think it's going to be the Lakers and Bucks.
I think the Lakers will win. I think the Bucks will make it.
I think it's going to be Lakers Bucks in the NBA Finals.
But the Bucks will win it.
No, I think the Lakers are going to win.
Okay, you think the Lakers will win?
I think the Lakers will win.
Oh, I thought you meant the Bucks.
No. I'm thinking the Bucks will make it, but I think the Lakers will win.
We can resume this interview.
Okay, we can resume. Okay, good. Because I was like, no.
They got to win it for Kobe, man.
I think the Lakers have a good chance of winning this year because of that, and like you mentioned with the Kobe situation, I think they've got a good chance of winning.
Everybody thinks the Clippers, though. Everybody thinks the Clippers.
I like the Clippers' chance. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, I think that Western Conference Final series, if it is Lakers and Clippers,
this is gonna be the most watched Western Conference Finals of all
time. It's gonna be a good series. So I mean, it's gonna. So I don't know, because I think it's gonna be Lakers Bucks in the finals. To be honest with you, and I haven't really looked to see who the other standings are in the Eastern Conference, but I think
it's kind of the Celtics.
And it's
Philly.
I think it's pretty safe to say I think it's going to be the Lakers and Bucks.
Yeah.
And I think the Lakers will win.
Yeah.
In that situation. Now, if it's any other Western Conference team, it's going to be interesting to see. So.
Right. But it'll either be the Lakers or the Clippers in there. I don't think nobody will beat them. You know. But the second question is, so to you, greatest sports memory? It can be high school, something that you just covered, NBA, like just what is your greatest sports memory that you can think of?
I think the greatest sports memory, and I remember watching this on TV. The Texas Rangers, their first year of getting in the World Series in 2010.
Yeah.
As a Rangers fan growing up, we signed Alex Rodriguez to a big contract, and we ended up trading him to the Rangers ended up trading him to the Yankees.
Yeah.
And that 2010 World Series, to get in the World Series, they faced the Yankees and the ALCS the round before. And to clinch the World Series, they struck out Alex Rodriguez.
Well, yeah.
And they won the American League pennant. And I think that was my favorite memory, just watching the ump say, "Strike 3, you're out of there," and them going crazy that they were going to the World Series that year. Unfortunately, the Rangers got dealt a really tough, good San Francisco Giants team, because that Giants team ended up winning 3 World Series, like in, I think it was like 2010, 2012, 2014. So, I mean, they were start of that little area where they were really good.
Right.
So, I mean, it's one of those, I think that's my favorite memory, just growing up a Rangers fan, knowing all those years of getting beat by the Yankees in playoffs and everything. We finally got past them to get to the World Series. I think that was a really fun memory.
I think mine would probably be LeBron when he blocked it against the Warriors, and Kyrie hit the shot right after. That was probably to me that or the Ray Allen 3 when Chris Bosh got the rebound.
Okay, I like the Ray Allen 3.
That was a big. I'll never forget. Me and Grandma was sitting in the room watching it at her house, and it was just crazy.
Yeah.
That was.
I think the Ray Allen 3, and
there's been so many of them.
And then everybody was like, Well, you mentioned, growing up in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, obviously grew up a Dallas Cowboys fan, and they won 3 Super Bowls in my elementary school years. So that was the 90s when you had Troy Aikman, you had Emmitt Smith, you had Michael Irvin. Those 3 players alone, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So those are another good memories of mine. But I think I've always been a baseball fan, so the Rangers topped it, obviously.
Right.
Now, of course, if they would have won a World Series, that would have been probably better. But it is what it is.
Their new stadium is beautiful.
Their new stadium is.
Yeah.
I honestly, before the pandemic hit, I was this close to getting opening day tickets.
Oh wow!
And I was really wanting to go to the new stadium on opening day, but then everything happened and everything shut down. I'm just glad that they're going to maybe have a season.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just glad that, that maybe, and the new ballpark will get to actually host a basebal game. So that,
because they said at the old one, there was no shade and it was burning hot on people's faces.
Well, and so I don't know if you've heard the story before, but the reason why they got the new stadium is because someone had asked, "Oh, can you put the roof on the old stadium?" The old contractor said, "No, you can't. We built it to where there was no roof. It would be you would almost have to. The cost of building a roof would be almost the same as building a new stadium."
Oh wow!
So it's kind of like,
might as well get the new stadium.
The
new stadium is nice.
People have made fun of the outside look of the stadium. And I think that once people get to walk into the stadium and see them, like in person, I think they won't. And the AC is going to be a big, if you've ever been,
everybody comes to watch the game.
If you've ever been to a game, which I have in June or July at the old stadium, you're gonna love the air conditioning.
Right.
Like you're gonna love it because it's crazy to see what and it'll be nice to hopefully next year I'll be able to get to the new stadium and see a game. Someone asked me if they allowed fans, would you go? And I said, I don't think so, because just the fact that you don't know who has it and who doesn't, it's just like you kind of don't want to risk getting sick. So
seriously, but thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
No, good luck at MacU if you guys have a season. I hope you guys do get a season, because
I hope we do too.
Heather and I were talking about it the other day, because I guess I forgot to mention that you had just recently got the scholarship at MacU, and she's like, didn't they win a national championship most recently? I said, yeah. And they still have the coach there that, won it. Yeah. So I said
2016, and then they won. They were number 1 in the nation last year and everything. They were really
yeah.
Really
so
it's gonna be a big change for me. So it's gonna be a big deal. But all right, Annie. Well, thank you for having me.